Today I am joined once again by Katie, who has been suffering from back and neck pain for over 15 years. Today we're going to go over the doubt column to attack why her supposedly chronic issues continue to be there. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally. Katie, thank you again for joining me here. As always, it is an honor because you're sharing so much of yourself, and I really appreciate you doing this. It's going to benefit a lot of people. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Dan. I'm excited.
Okay, so we do have a lot to catch up on because we went through the emotional themes last time. I usually do like to hear how that sunk in for you, how it felt for you, and then today we're going to focus on the doubt column. But let's start with how that first session felt to you.
I'm going to flip back to my notes from last week. I mean, talking to you, it felt right on. It felt like you discovered and dug up some things that I wasn't really able to see within myself. It felt thorough, like we covered everything. So I think it went well.
Well, I certainly felt the same way from my perspective, but it's most important that it felt that way to you because you're the one who's going to come away with the information from these sessions. But I agree with you. It felt like it was thorough, and it seemed like you recognized yourself in those themes.
Yeah, I did. I've been trying to think throughout the week if there's anything we missed or if there's anything big that I feel like I left out, and I don't think there was. So.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I do want to, this is just paying you a little bit of a compliment, but you're very aware of these things. So it made it really easy to work in the emotions column. And I want to encourage everybody out there listening to this that for some people, it's not like that. For some people, it can feel really hard. It's not their kind of area of strength or a natural fit. I think for you, Katie, it was. And it's going to be interesting to see, well, now how does the doubt column fit for you? Because
I'm curious. And, I wasn't always like that type of person. My emotions were very closed off to me for a long time. But I have to attribute it to a journaling practice that I started in recent years, 2 years ago, maybe, that made it a lot easier for me to recognize and articulate my emotions. So that's been really helpful.
Well, it clearly did quite a job because you were really able to do it, and you were able to recognize when I suggested things to you. Remember, I would say certain things, and you would adjust maybe even just a word. Or you'd say, that's totally accurate, but let's adjust this little part. That subtlety is part of what I'm looking for in the emotions column. So we're off and running. We're doing really well with that. Let's turn now to the doubt column.
Yes.
And what I'd like to do is explain to you, even though you're probably familiar with it because you're familiar with my system, but I want to orient you to it again anyway and help you, give you a chance to ask any questions that you might have. Our job here is to get kind of the lay of the land in your doubt world in the same way that we did in the emotions column with your emotions. Now, it doesn't work quite the same. We're not laying out 6 to 12 themes that you're going to be able to rely on all the time because doubts are in the thousands. They go on and on and on. They have little subtleties. They have all kinds of different aspects to them. What I want to do instead is build a framework for how you deal with all of those doubts because they're going to keep coming. Doubt always keeps coming. So first, let me review something that you probably are again, familiar with from having known my system. But doubt comes in 4 different forms. It comes in fear. It comes in confusion. It comes in lack of certainty, which is kind of garden variety doubt, or it just comes in questions. And ultimately, one thing that I want to help you and everybody else out there to see is that we want to move doubt along that spectrum. We want to move it from fear all the way to questions. Ultimately, I want to get this reduced mostly to just questions where you feel like, I'm not afraid of this anymore. I'm not confused anymore. I'm even pretty certain about it, but I do have some questions that I need answered. We may not get you to that point today, but the doubt column work is moving towards that. So it's important to keep in mind those forms of doubt. Now, let me remind you also of the levels of doubt. You can have doubt about whether your symptoms are mind-body or not.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, are they purely physical? Do they come from some medical issue? That kind of thing. We want to get you to certainty where you're just like, no, these are all mind body. I'm certain.
Yep.
Where you are in that journey, I'm going to find out, but I'm just laying this out there first. The second
Mm-hmm.
level of doubt, though, is you could be convinced that it is mind body, but you could feel that your mind body symptom, or maybe one of them or a couple of them, are harder to resolve than others. And we want to break through that doubt and help you see, nope, they all work the same. They're all resolvable. There is no distinction between any symptom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the third one, and this one I think is definitely going to resonate, at least to some degree, is level 3 doubt is about doubts about the self. Can I get better? Is there something in me that's going to hold me back?
Mm-hmm.
Based on your emotions column and some of the strengths of those emotions, I'm betting there's going to be at least some of that there.
Yeah.
But we'll be exploring it, and I'll find out. I'm not the one who knows. You're the one who will know. So now, Katie, I'm going to tell you about the tasks of the doubt column. I don't know if you're familiar with this, and please let me know.
Okay.
In the doubt column, we're going to do 3 things: observe, articulate, and counter. And what do I mean by that? Observing doubts means to call them into question, to recognize them as doubts, because otherwise we think they're facts. And so if you have a fear that you think is a fact, it's not yet a doubt. It's not yet identified as a doubt. It's an active fear. If you're confused about something and you just feel it is genuinely confusing, as opposed to recognizing that's a doubt that has gotten me confused, then you haven't identified the doubt. So observing is about seeing that it is doubt, or at least calling it into question. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay. Articulating the doubts is about getting it put into specific words. A lot of times people can say, I don't know why it doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense. And I say, okay, wait a minute, hold on. We can get this put into words. Why doesn't it make sense? And that's part of my job. Once you've started to observe the doubt and I've given you reason to look at something, I can help you get it articulated, though you may already have it well articulated. We'll see. But once it's articulated, that's when we can counter it. And what do we do when we counter it? We're going to use science, and we're going to use logic, and we're going to find the strategies that work for you. It doesn't matter what works for me. I mean, it matters what works for me and my symptoms, but it doesn't matter what works for me for you and your symptoms. We have to find the science and logic that makes you have no doubt. So we're just going to try to move doubt here, because you have had a symptom that has not moved for a while.
Yeah.
That speaks to the doubt column. You know, we did a great job identifying the emotions column themes, but we need to do doubt column work because the symptoms haven't moved, and that means there is doubt.
Yeah.
You know, the symptoms tell us a story, and they're telling us the story that you have doubt, or it would be moving. So I'll say more about that, and you can certainly ask questions along the way.
Okay.
You good to go so far?
I am, yep. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say about this, because this is something that I've had trouble with myself, and it feels frustrating and kind of like a mystery, and don't know where to go with it. So.
Yep. Well, frustration is a form of doubt. Feeling that it's a mystery is a form of doubt. Feeling confused is a form of doubt. So our goal here today is to get as many of your questions asked and answered as we can. And if we reduce even one of those doubts, all the doubts start to weaken. So we're just going to start to shrink doubt. That's the goal. We'll get to some of it. We won't get to all of it because doubt is sprawling. But let me start with when I mentioned those 4 forms of doubt, did any jump out at you as ones that you definitely have?
So I feel like I've moved past fear pretty well. I used to be very engulfed in fear. I've had this pain for 15 years, and for the first maybe 7 to 10 years, my life was ruled by fear, and my life became very small. And not only was I afraid to do any of the things I used to do, I was also really afraid that I'd never get better, that no one could identify what my symptoms were. and it just felt consuming.
Mm-hmm.
The fear is something that I've been able to come to terms with and sort of overcome in the past 1 or 2 years since I started doing that journaling. Now, the confusion or lack of certainty is probably closer to where I am in my doubt.
Okay. And do you have specific questions in mind, or is that something that we're gonna bring out more? I'm sure you have tons of questions because everybody does. That's part of what confusion is and lack of certainty. But what I mean is, do you have very specific questions in mind that if I answered them, you'd feel less confused and more certain? Because
No, I
that's
don't think so. I think it's like flesh it out,
yeah.
and you can hear sort of where I'm coming from with it.
Okay, so this is helpful because this is what I do in the doubt column is I assess where people are at with their doubt column. You're telling me we don't have to work on fear so much, but confusion is all over the place and a lack of certainty is there. And the questions, you're not quite at that point yet. And which
I
makes
would
sense
say
to me, by the way.
I'm not even to the questions yet. I need to
Right.
get to that level.
Well, when you're too confused or too afraid for that matter, you've reduced the fear. But when you're too confused, it's hard to even articulate the questions. So I'm going to help you start to get confusion under control and start to get questions articulated and maybe even observed. We might need to observe the doubt, meaning you might be having a thought and not realize it's a doubt. Just think it's true.
Yes.
So I'm going to start combing through what I know about the doubt column as it relates to you. A couple of questions as we go. When I mention those different levels of doubt, the level 1 doubt as to whether it's mind, body or not, do you have doubt about that, or are you certain about that? Is there confusion and lack of certainty in that?
I feel like when I first learned about mind, body, and TMS and all that, I was very, very certain. And the fact that over the years, the symptoms, especially the back pain, because that's my number one symptom. That is the thing that we're here to talk about. The symptom hasn't really changed. So I was so certain about the mind, body, or TMS diagnosis. I fit the personality perfectly, like those books have been written to and about me.
Right.
But the thing that started to make me uncertain is that I wasn't seeing relief in the symptoms.
Okay, so I think you're observing. This is a doubt. You're aware. You're not sure if this is true or not, but you are aware that the fact that you haven't gotten better, even with the mind-body knowledge, is making you have a question as to whether it is mind-body. Does that sound right?
There you go. Right. Yes.
Okay, so we just articulated it right there. And by the way, we can both take notes on this.
Mm-hmm.
I will send you the notes afterwards, but I just want to get this put into words again. So I'm going to say the fact that, and I try to keep it as simple as possible because that's the way to keep it in mind, but the fact that I haven't gotten better, even with mind-body knowledge, makes me doubt that this is mind-body. Is that right?
I would change it to say, instead of mind-body knowledge, maybe mind-body knowledge and work.
And work. Okay, good. So that's better articulated because otherwise it doesn't fully address the question you have.
Because not only have I read the books and learned about this, I've done extensive work on myself by doing classes, workshops, working with TMS doctors and meditation, like so many different facets of it, writing.
So let's see if we can get this even more articulated. What is it you end up saying to yourself about the fact that you haven't gotten better? Like what are the alternative explanations that come up, that sort of thing? Because these are doubts as well.
The thing that always pops in my head first is like, Katie, you're not doing it right. It must be like you just can't do it. Other people are stronger than you or smarter, or they're on the right track. There's just something about you can't do it.
Okay, now that is what I call level 3 doubt, the one I talked about that relates to the self, right? It doesn't matter. We don't have to go in order. What you can do with doubt is you can just write down all the doubts that you have. It's a form of journaling.
Yeah.
go ahead and write them down. So I put down, Katie, you're not doing it right. Other people are stronger or smarter.
Yeah, other people can do it, but I can't.
That's right. Now, I'm not saying that's right like it's true, but that's right. That's what you're saying. So
I understand.
when we have a doubt that is observed and articulated. It's lying out there right for us to counter.
Mm-hmm.
The question is going to be, how are we going to counter it? Now, I'm going to go through countering a little bit later in this session, but I'm just showing you how we could start getting them observed and articulated. They're set up to be countered.
Yes.
Eventually, I am going to say something to you about why I think it's not actually the case that people are stronger or smarter than you, and that's why it's happened. That's not
Right.
the real result. But I have to show you why. I have to give you an answer that answers it to your full satisfaction, which could happen today. It might not. If it doesn't, then we continue the work. But we're on our way because we're getting it articulated. You see what I mean?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Let's keep at this. Let's jump back to, and I'm just following the exploration in a way that makes sense to me. It doesn't matter how we go. If you have other doubts that you know about, go ahead and fire them away. We just want to get them articulated.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, let me ask you, what are some other big
you go ahead.
doubts? No, you. Better coming from you.
So you asked me when it pops into my head, what are the reasons I'm not getting better despite my TMS or mind body knowledge and work? The first thing that I think of is that I'm not good enough to heal and other people are, like they do it better. And another one is I don't want to cling on to a medical diagnosis, but I know that there's like a kernel in the back of my mind that thinks it might actually be something with your back or your muscles. I was like a pre-professional level dancer for 17 years. So a lot of doctors have told me that it could be something to do with being heavily athletic, having my body being hypermobile and very flexible from dance. And then I'm quitting dance and I'm doing other postures that aren't a correct dance posture where my posture is really good. And then I stopped doing it after 17 years. And then a few years later, I had the back pain. So maybe I wasn't using my muscles. Maybe I was slumping over. Like I just have been fed this elaborate system of why it could be physical, even though nothing shows up on x-rays, MRIs, or any sort of test to give me any sort of concrete diagnosis beyond those speculations.
Right. Okay. Very well articulated, but what I want to do now is to show you why the things that you just told me are part of the reason you haven't gotten better. I do not mean that as blame or criticism. I mean it as support and empathy. You've been stuck in this position without knowing why, and I can now shed some light on it. And I can do it with just some logic. So think about it this. If you're thinking, even a small part of you is thinking that it might be physical, and Sarno says you got to accept the diagnosis fully, it makes perfect sense to me that this is part of what's standing in the way. Mm-hmm. These questions have to be settled completely, mm-hmm. or else you haven't been able to move off of it. I'm not saying these specific doubts are the primary reason, because it's really a collection of doubts that's holding you back. But think about it. I mean, if you're trying to deal with a mind-body process and you're supposed to be certain about it, and there's some part of you that has this nagging fear or confusion or lack of certainty, doesn't it have to get answered to be able to get it settled? That's how I think about it.
Yeah, I haven't found the answer. And like no one's been able to answer it for me. I actually even worked with a TMS therapist or, counselor that eventually the thing I got most out of our meetings together is he said, do you really buy into this 100% that this is mind body? And after pushing me, I said, it's like 90% and 10% is probably, it could possibly be physical. Right. And he said, there. And this was a few years ago. So I always carry that thought in my mind and I know that's the truth.
Yes. And listen, this is not your fault at all. And it's very, very common that people can read Sarno or know all about mind-body work and explore all kinds of things. But until it is settled, you're carrying around doubt with you. and doubt opens the door for the symptoms to stay. And it doesn't need a wide crack. Go ahead.
Yeah. When the doubt was so encouraged by those quote unquote experts that I put so much stake into in the first meeting that we had last week, it makes sense that it's hard for me to drop what they've told me.
That's right. Now, you and I are going to do some work so that you actually can drop that.
I would love that.
The goal is to move you from, let's say, 90% to 100%. You could still have some questions that are designed to get you even further in your understanding of it, but I want that doubt down to 0. And it's my job to do it. If you could do it yourself, you would have.
Yeah, that's why I'm here, Dad.
Right. So I just wanted to say, let's look at this. Here's one doubt that you said. Maybe I wasn't using my muscles. Maybe I was slumping over, right? Now, there's that 90% part, it makes you laugh, right?
Yeah.
But the 10%'s not laughing. The 10% is worried about it, or at least has questions about it. And so what we would need to do is to actually have a discussion where you and I kind of have a back and forth until we master that. I think we should go ahead and do that on this one, and then we'll come back to some other doubts. Let's go ahead and do it. So you said maybe I wasn't using my muscles. I want to get this a little more articulated. Are you saying that it's possible that like muscle atrophy could have led to the pain, and then you're just kind of stuck in it because you haven't built the muscles back up? Is that what you're saying? I don't actually know.
I mean, it's so confusing, all the stuff that they've told me, that I made it into this picture that kind of makes sense, but I don't even know if it's medically a thing.
Well,
like
I want you to try, though. Because listen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because this is the belief you're carrying around. So let's voice it. What is it?
So what my mind says is that during dance, my posture was really open and it was really good posture. I was squeezing my shoulder blades and holding all these muscles. Then I quit dance after the 17 years. And what I started doing was running a photography business. And photography is like the opposite body position where you're kind of slumping over a camera. And I've had physical therapists and doctors telling me that going from like a very upward postural position to kind of like a slumpy and your head's forward position could have started this neck pain in the first place.
Okay. So there's a couple things I want to say about this. First of all, one of the ways that we can deconstruct a doubt, where we can actually combat it once it's been observed and articulated, is to recognize what you just said from an emotional standpoint, because I think it'll make more sense. Essentially, what you're saying is, I think maybe this pain started because I gave up dance. Now, interestingly, you're saying it from a physical standpoint. Mm-hmm. But emotionally, we know how painful that was to you.
Yeah, and what was also painful was taking on a career that like I didn't necessarily want to do that much.
That's right.
I went to art school. I enjoyed art, but it wasn't my dream of life to shoot weddings and stuff.
That's right. And that's why listen, this is a particular way of combating doubt, a particular doubt, but I think it will help with you because what you can see is the very worries you have take on a physicalized form of what you're actually worried about emotionally.
I see exactly what you're saying. Uh-huh. It's so literal. It's kind of funny.
It is kind of funny, although if it weren't so tragic from how hard it's been.
I also have to tell you that my sister is a physical therapist. And so I've put a lot of stock in what physical therapists have told me. She picked up that career because she was sort of inspired to help out people who had problems like me. So I couldn't always be saying, bump the physical therapists and what they say. I had to hold it in some reverence and show respect for her and her career and show her love through that. So that's like another part where the emotional component kind of comes into it.
Do you see how you just observed a doubt? You just noticed. Maybe you had noticed it before, I don't know, but it seemed like you noticed it more just now. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, wait a minute. I've held myself to a standard of needing to have reverence for these people, and that means I can never be certain that they're wrong. Does that sound right? I articulated it well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So far we already have 5 doubts, and I can tell you there's hundreds. That's the way it is
Mm-hmm.
with doubt. But as we address these, it's going to start to shrink. Let me ask you a question. When I said the thing about how your emotional life was getting mirrored in the physicality of dance versus photography, do you think that will help you bring down that doubt? I don't know yet, but it could bring it down some because it's so literally connected. It seems to be almost absurd that doubt wouldn't come from a psychological place as opposed to a true physical doubt.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree. It totally makes sense. I mean, I don't know if I've ever thought about it like that before. So,
Well, you're going to need some time with this thinking. But, here's another thing you're going to need time with thinking. Does slumping over actually cause any pain? Does posture matter? I can tell you, I know lots of
it
studies.
never did until that day.
So think about it logically. You can use that piece of information that it never did until that day. Why would it suddenly?
And if it was an injury from using a camera in photography, like in a week it would feel better or it'd be getting better. Oh, it was an injury, now it's getting better. Not just like, oh, you just messed it up and now for 15 years it's just so broken from this benign thing like holding a camera.
That's right. I mean, all injuries heal. Think about it from the vantage point of like a cut. I promise you, you've never met somebody, seen a cut, and said, "Oh, where'd you get that?" And they said, "Oh, 3 years ago, I got cut, and it just, I don't know, just can't heal. Don't know why." But that's the equivalent of what we're saying with this stuff.
Let me tell you, like during this back pain, I've had 2 abdominal surgeries that were pretty major where I was stitched together and it healed up. And it's like within weeks, oh my gosh, my stomach's so much better. I can stand up. Now I can walk around. Now I can get back to life.
Right. Yes. So you are living proof right here that you are constantly healing. Why would you not be healing here?
Yeah.
It can't be physical because if it was, you would have healed.
Yeah.
It can't be purely physical, I want to say, because the mind-body does become physical, but not in the same way. It's a feedback loop. Okay, now, you may have said these things to yourself at various points. My question to you is, are we dialing back some of the doubt as we talk about these things? Because ultimately what I do is in talking to people about their doubts and seeing and helping them see that all of their doubts rest on faulty logic or bad science. They start to doubt their own doubts. they start to see the whole thing is messed up. I don't need to doubt this at all.
I feel like the thing that's cracked in there the best has been the connection with the emotions to the doubt of, well, Katie, like you quit doing dance and you didn't really mourn that loss. You didn't really want to quit. You were kind of forced to quit. And then you got huge pain.
That's right. Okay, so I want to say something. This is a very good observation and a very important observation. And it goes with the instinct that I had when I noticed what you were saying from an emotional standpoint. Some people's doubts come from the fact that they just maybe haven't heard the science and logic portrayed in the way that works well for them. Some people's doubts rule because they're not being observed. They don't even know they are doubts. Some people's doubts rule because they haven't been articulated so much. Other people's doubts, though, exist for more emotional reasons, where there are certain principles of their emotional life that haven't been worked out yet, and they're getting expressed through doubt. And that is exactly what I described about dance and photography and why doubt would take that specific form. So we could combat it with the idea that slumping over is actually, it's been shown scientifically to have no effect. Posture has no effect. I can point you all to studies about it. And that is the thing that works for some people. But for you, what's getting in there is the observation. Look how your doubts fit with your psychology. That can't be an accident.
And look how keen TMS is.
Yes.
To pick something so effective like that I kind of just overlook it for all these years. I mean, my emotions were buried down so deep that I would never think about these kind of correlations.
Right. And doubt chooses the most effective path it can to stay. So the fact that it chose these buried emotions to hide in makes sense. So now I want to ask you, is it starting to feel like you can see why you haven't gotten better yet? I don't know.
Sure.
It is.
Yeah. I wanted your help to be able to see what I can't see. So
Right. Well, and it sounds like you're not only getting it, but in the getting it, it's starting to make sense why you haven't gotten better yet.
Absolutely.
So you have we're going to find out more about it as we go, but you have a type of doubt, or I don't want to use the word type of doubt. That can be a little confusing, but you have a variety of doubt, I guess I would say, that is the kind that comes up very typically when people are afraid of becoming powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They're guarded against becoming powerful in their own lives, and doubt comes in to the rescue, in a way, and as a complete terror, to say, don't worry, you don't have to worry about becoming powerful because I'm going to keep you in doubt. So as an example, when you said this thing about your sister and physical therapists, believing that you're right and all of them are wrong is a very powerful thing. And I think you're shying away from power. Again, don't mean that critically. I actually mean it very supportively and empathically. But we're identifying the source of the problem here. And that's why you're going to get better. Because that hadn't been identified before.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't be presumptuous, actually. Maybe it had been identified in a TMS therapy session or something. Does this sound at all familiar, or does it feel like, no, this is different?
No, I mean, that sounds completely right on. Who am I to tell this whole bag of professionals that I'm right and I'm just an artist and they're all from the medical field? So yes, absolutely. I can't believe that.
Right. Okay, so now we have it really well articulated. That is a major reason you're not getting better yet, because you have there's like a prohibition against being that certain. You can't feel free to do it. You and I are going to have to help you unlock how will you be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we do the power column work the next time we meet, it's going to go a long way towards that, because we're going to find out, why have you not wanted to be powerful?
Right.
Or why have you felt it's not possible or not okay?
Mm-hmm.
I think when your power goes, in this case, when your power goes up, your doubt's going to come way down.
Mm-hmm.
Is that making sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In the times in my life when my power is up, my symptoms, they're not a big deal.
You mean in terms of how
my,
you're thinking about them, or do the symptoms actually lessen?
I mean, I guess the symptoms are still there, but I just don't feel so consumed by them. I feel mostly like I'm going to do what I need to do,
Yeah.
whether the pain's there or not.
Okay, so you're going to get that, but you're also going to get pain reduction, because when this is going to help you reduce doubt in a way that it wouldn't have before. Before, you were becoming powerful, but you didn't have the link between that and the role doubt was playing.
Right.
You're now getting new information.
I was sort of fake. I would fake. What I've done is like faked power, or I've like faked it till you make it. Like I've done a lot of leader and boss type and big decision type things in my life, in my career, but there was never like an inherent and true feeling of I can be powerful, I can express my opinion is worthy, my knowledge is worth something, I'm just as good as anyone else.
Right.
So
okay, now let's look at this a little bit more. We have some other doubts that we can get articulated soon, but I want to stick on this because I think we're getting a lot out of it. One of the things I'm thinking about is, well, how are you going to get to a place where you can answer, who am I to say they're wrong? I want to ask you some questions about that.
Mm-hmm.
You could say, who am I to question they're wrong, but here's the real conundrum that you're going to face here. They are wrong. So what are you supposed to do about it? You know, it's not your fault they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's their own profession. The medical journals are out there telling us these things.
Mm-hmm.
And they either are not aware of that information, or haven't taken the time to be aware of it, or have been presented with the information and ignored it. But the facts are incontrovertible. They are actually wrong about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm comfortable saying that.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to get you to be comfortable saying that? And when I say that to you, how does it feel? Would that feel relieving to accept? Or
I feel like on the surface, I believe you and I like agree with you. And then inside of me, there's the part that's like, that doesn't quite buy it. So
right. So what's
need,
the Minority Report on this? What are you saying to yourself about how they actually are still right somehow, even though the evidence says no?
right. God, that's hard. I don't know. Like the amount of schooling or experience. I don't know. Lots of college on residence. Like,
Well, let me ask you though. I mean, we need to get these articulated. Are you saying that maybe those scientific journals are wrong? Maybe they were flawed experiments, or I don't know. And I just want you to note, look how this is what happens when I expose a doubt and I get it to its essence. Usually you have no answer, which is a sign that it's wrong.
I have no answer.
Right. So that's a good thing. And this is what I want to kind of train you to do in your doubt column, is chase the doubt into a corner until it's like, I guess my reason is that, once you get doubt speaking like that, it's garbage.
Yeah.
There's nowhere for it to go. So we're gonna fight these doubts on two fronts. We're gonna help you see what's the thing in the power column that's preventing you from going ahead and being powerful and being settled about this, because that's the personal conflict that's keeping you from being certain. But we're also going to use the intellectual side, the science and the logic, and expose these doubts as pretty bumbling. They don't have good answers.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that when I asked you those things? Could you feel how that doubt was scrambling and didn't really have an answer?
Yes, absolutely. Like flustered.
Right. So we're going to fluster every single one of these doubts.
Great.
And I'm going to teach you how to do it. And then you're going to continue doing that. And as you do it, your doubt is going to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. And then on top of it, you'll be gaining in power, and then there won't be reason for your doubt to hang on so much. So we've got all the recipe to have this happen. Now, let's jump back and continue to articulate some doubts. What other doubts are holding you back? If you have them in any way articulate, I can help pull them out if not.
Yeah, help pull some out. I feel like those two are my biggest ones, like that I'm not good enough to heal and other people can, but I just can't, or that there's some kernel of it that must be medical or physical.
Well, let me ask you this. In the medical or physical realm, is there anything else that worries you other than posture?
Do you mean, is there anything else that worried me to do with my back? I mean, I altered my whole life because I thought it was physical. So I would walk like I was 27, walk around with a cane.
Yeah, what I'm asking though is what else do you imagine is going on physically, or is posture the whole thing? It may be.
No, that is a flustered doubt too, because I don't know what's going on physically. Like no one has been able to give me a really great answer. It's muscular, it's musculoskeletal, it's postural. All of these like really vague.
Do you worry about like a herniated disc or anything like that?
No, never shown on imaging. I guess there was a little bit of like arthritis, but no. It's just I guess the postural and muscular parts of it.
Let's dig into the muscular part. Let's see if we can get this articulated. If it's not postural and it's not a herniated disc or arthritis or anything like that, because you're pretty clear on that, what is it muscularly that gets in the way? Here's a good example. I'm not saying this does apply to you, but one example would be, I believe it's because of muscle tightness, and I don't think that I can stop my muscle tightness because I'm so tense.
Yes.
That may be a doubt of yours. Or it may not. I don't know.
That is one.
It is.
I'm writing
Okay.
that down
Okay.
because the other side of that would be muscle weakness,
Okay.
feeling like I've done a whole bunch of exercises for my shoulder blades and my neck, but maybe it's not the right exercises. If I was just to do the right ones to make me just as strong as I was during dance, then that would be like the ticket. So those two in combination, muscle tightness, like the muscles can never relax, and muscle weakness, like I can't hold my neck and back the way it's supposed to or the way I did during dance because I'm just strengthening it wrong.
Okay. Very good articulations of doubts. You see how important it is? We got it very specifically articulated. Now the doubt has nowhere to run. It has to stick with what it said. It can't exist in the nebulous space of, oh, I just don't know. That's doubt's favorite place to hang out. Where, don't even investigate it. You just will never find out. Which is why when doctors say, hey, there's just some things we don't know, it's one of the worst things they could possibly say to patients.
Dan, I had a back specialist say, he said, oh, backs. Like the back specialist said that to me when I'm desperate for help and a diagnosis. Oh, backs.
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's amazing how dismissive they are about the problem, as if it's okay that we have this problem. I mean, these are back specialists. They're supposed to help with the back, and they're fine saying, I don't know.
Yeah, he was just ready to go take lunch.
I'm not that way about what I do. So I don't understand that, and I think it's a sign of the fact that they are very mixed up themselves. And we need to shine a light on that, and we need to be certain on that. But as I think about this, we just did a very important and good job articulating the doubts. Now they're not in that nebulous, I just don't know place. Assuming we get to a place where we think that things have meaning and can be understood, we don't need to stay in that place. We can get to the specifics. And once we get to the specifics, the doubt cannot run away from this. If the doubt is going to try to cling to, maybe it's about muscle weakness and I'm not yet doing the right muscle exercise, as an example. It has to back that up. That has to make sense in all circumstances. If it doesn't make sense in any circumstances, it's wrong. So here's a good example, and I don't know if this particular counter will work for you. I have two ideas, and one I'm certain is going to work because it goes towards the emotional. But one that is more intellectual is this. People, professional athletes get back pain. They get it all the time. Could it possibly be about muscle weakness? They are working those muscles ferociously. The idea that muscle weakness causes pain it just flies in the face of at least some of the things we know. Now, you could counter with, but their back pain is going to be different than my back pain. Okay, then that would be doubt articulating a new doubt, which it will try to do to hang on. But I just exposed the idea of weakness as pretty absurd.
Right.
Here's another example. People talk about strengthening your core as if that's supposed to help with the back. Well, actually, when you think about it, that is extremely illogical. It doesn't even fit with what these same people say. They say that, somehow these muscles have atrophied. How would your stomach muscles atrophy much? We are using them all the time. How would the front of your body atrophy, but the back wouldn't? That's just bizarre. Then they'll come back and say, no, it's because your back is atrophied. And so strengthening your core will help that. Well, why is one muscle more important than another? Or why does one play a supportive role and the other is primary? These things make no sense. They're complete gobbledygook.
Yeah.
And that's actually absurd. Good news that we can expose them like that. So we can go the intellectual method and hammer away at the science and the logic of it. Or we can get to the other side, which is the more emotional approach. And that is that you feel like you're not doing it right. All of your doubts take that form. I'm not right. I'm doing it wrong. There must be something I'm missing. And the fact that it all fits there means that every single one of your doubt, I mean this is good news, is nonsense. We're going to have to help you see it. But if it all takes that form, how would it be possible they'd be right? They're all on the same foundation. Is that making sense?
Yeah, that's completely it. Even just having you recite, I'm not doing it right. And that's the basis of all these things. I could feel like hotness well up in my cheeks and my eyes start to well up a little, like I was going to get upset. It was like a trigger that's exactly it.
Well, and when the emotion comes up, we know in the emotional realm that we're right. You know, you wouldn't have had that response if it didn't resonate and feel exactly right. So,
yeah,
I would say we've got two main tools that we're going to use against doubt, but the most powerful one for you appears to be when you see that these doubts take on a form that fits with your psychology.
Yeah.
When you see that, you know they can't be right because they're doing what your whole psychology has done when you've been struggling. And that is, I think this is why you haven't gotten better. You've had doubt, and you've even been able to work on the intellectual side of the doubt, the science and the logic. But what you were missing was how the doubts were clinging on to your psychology and utilizing it against you.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a little bit of time to just check in about how this doubt column work is going, whether you feel optimistic that it can advance, and what you need further. You may not know yet, but I just want to check in with you about it.
Yeah, I absolutely feel like we're on the right track, that you have been able to tap into the sort of emotional and psychological portions of it that I can't see. That was one of my incentives for reaching out to you, because I know your background. And you're right, I have done a lot of the like intellectualizing and science and journals on why the medical diagnosis can't be right. But if I've known all that for all these years and my pain still hasn't gotten better, and I haven't seen the changes and symptoms, then it's got to be this other thing that I can't do on my own.
Right. And when you said, the very first doubt you voiced was the fact that I haven't gotten better, even with mind-body knowledge and work, makes me doubt that this is mind-body.
Yeah.
To me, I'm hoping that we've countered that in large measure, because we've given an alternate explanation. You have the knowledge and you've done the work, but you were missing a piece of the knowledge and a piece of the work, which is these doubts are taking on the same form your psychology does. That's where doubt is hiding.
Yeah.
And doubt hides wherever it can. I don't think it's been able to hide from you in a kind of science and logic sort of way.
No.
You're thinking too clearly about it. It can't hide there. Where did it hide? In your psychology. It always hides where it can.
Yeah, that totally hits. I mean, that totally makes sense.
So now I just want to ask you this, and I don't want to put you on the spot. You can think about it. You don't have to answer it now. But my goal here when I do this kind of doubt column work is to help you feel more optimistic that something new can happen, that you've gotten new information. Is that the case, or you're not sure yet? It sounded like you're moving towards that, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case. I feel like you can give me some tools and some guidance about where to go with this, what to do with that. But it feels right on.
Okay. Well, the fact that it feels right on tells us to keep going with that. I am going to give you more tools. Actually, it's going to be a perfect lead into next time, because the power column is actually where a lot of those tools lie. When the doubt column is more about that I can't get settled on information, or the science and the logic doesn't totally add up, or I've got questions, or maybe my fear's too great, there's all kinds of reasons to continue operating in the doubt column. But when the doubt column is primarily showing level 3 doubt about the self, we do the work in the power column, which is right where we're headed. So we've identified the emotional nature of the doubts. Now we're going to get into the power column and what to do about it. So we'll pick up with that next time. And I'll send you the notes that I made here, but I want you to make notes too. You may find that there's all sorts of doubts you're going to start to articulate. And you might even find that you'll start articulating them and be like, oh, wow, oh, that mirrors my psychology too.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see that. There's a lot of your doubts that mirror your psychology. So we're on to the heart of it. This is great work, and I'm excited to continue.
Yeah, me too. I think this is great.
All right. I'm glad you're feeling that way because you're the only one that matters here. You know, I have good ideas, but if it doesn't feel like it's taking hold in you, what good are we doing? The good news is in both sessions we've done, we've gotten further. We've gotten lots of information. We've got an organization about how we're going to think about it. So we will continue that next time. Katie, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time.
All right. Thank you so much, Dan. This was great.
All right. Thanks, Katie. I was very pleased with this session with Katie. I think she's well on her way, and more importantly, she feels that she's well on her way. That is an incredibly important thing when it comes to the doubt column, because ultimately, we need to help people see something different is going to happen here. If nothing different is going to happen, they're not going to have expectations that it's going to get better. Well, one of the major changes we saw in Katie today is that she saw that a lot of her doubts take the same form as her psychology. That was the thing that broke through to her. And I want you guys to note, when I explored other areas that she maybe would have needed combating doubt in, those weren't the areas that really resonated with her. She was kind of like, essentially, I've done that, I agree, but it's not breaking through somehow. When I talked to her about the fact that her psychology was mirrored in the doubts, that's when she lit up. That's when you could tell she was attaching to something new. And whenever we find something new that's going to bring down doubt, that brings hope. All we need her to do is to be able to bring down her doubt. And the power column is really going to help with that next time. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.